One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
This is Bob Bender. You're listening to this edition of the business side of music. In the studio today, gentlemen, I had the good fortune, I'm going to say, of running into last week at an event here in Nashville during the NAMM show week, which is a week of musical insanity, if you ask me. Larry Butler, got to meet him. He was actually on stage talking a little bit about what he does and also promoting a book he has written called the Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help You Improve Your Chances of Success. I started reading this and went, you know, if I was going to be a musician, I should have read this about 20 years ago because it's pretty brutally honest, and we're going to get into that. It's definitely worth the read. I think anybody that's going to be wanting to be in the entertainment business should read this. Larry, you started out as a musician playing in bars.
Bar bands in Ohio, in high school and college. Worked my way through college playing in bars at night.
And vocalist, songwriter, and then you became a publisher and a recording artist?
I've been a concert and club promoter. I've been an agent.
God bless you.
I've been a roadie.
And you were a tour manager for a while.
Tour manager for 5 years.
So we're kindred spirits there. And
definitely.
And then you became a VP in charge of touring at Warner Brothers. So
it's called Artist Development, Artist Relations.
About the same time.
Essentially, it was about touring with the theory at Warner's at the time, and it proved true, is the fact that a lot of music is sold, a lot of records are sold while the artist is on tour in those marketplaces, and it's best to utilize every moment of every day rather than sitting around the hotel room watching soap operas. It's time to get out and meet some people, and that was my job, is to get the bands out of the hotels and into the media.
Which was, as it turned out when we were talking, it was my job too when I was at my record label.
This is like one alcoholic talking to another.
A musical alcoholic.
Musical.
So anyway, Larry, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
Thanks, Bob. Pleasure.
How did you get into the record business? Let me ask you that first.
Just like everybody else, by happenstance. There are people, I assume, who actually set out to be in the record business. I was setting out to have a good time and meet girls and play rock and roll music from high school on, and just learn by doing. I pretty much had a background. I mean, everyone who listened to the radio would know all the songs, and I was in church choir, so I could harmonize, I could sing, I knew some music theory. My mom was a piano teacher. So when I joined a band, I pretty much became the musical director because I actually knew how music worked and played keyboards.
This is getting even more freaky because I was a tour manager. I was a manager of artist development. I also performed in a church choir in my church. I was the musical director.
It's what you did in that era.
Yeah, it is. It is going back.
And it was a great education. There was actually music in schools. I learned a lot about how chord progressions work from the fact that in my elementary school and high school, there were music teachers. It was a course you took.
Yeah, starting around 3rd or 4th grade, I think it was. Yeah, you got the flutophone.
Yep.
You learned how to do that, and then you chose the instrument that you wanted to play.
Well, it was chosen for me. No one else wanted to play string bass.
Oh my gosh, I played string bass.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And so they said, well, what do you want to play? I thought, I don't know. What do you got? He said, string bass. I said, fine. So I played string bass through elementary school and high school.
Yeah, that's what I did too. Yeah, until my first and only year of college, and I was a bassist. But I also had my rock and roll band and played bass in that.
I didn't play bass in the band because, as Paul McCartney says, no one in the Beatles wanted to play bass because their vision of a bass player is the old fat guy in the back by the drums, and none of them wanted that job. And Paul said, I'll be the bass player, but I'm not standing in the back, and I'm going to play the bass like a guitar.
But I'm going to play it left-handed.
And left-handed. And everybody else went, sure, as long as you play bass, we're cool.
We don't care.
Okay.
So the book comes along, the Singer-Songwriter Rulebook. And one of the things we talked about is now, because the business is constantly changing and it's evolving and developing. And one of the things we didn't touch base on is you're a live performance coach now. So you're out there helping developing artists, or I would think even some established artists that maybe need a little bit of a tune-up.
And are open to it.
Yeah.
They all need it.
Yeah.
Everyone needs it. Everyone needs a tune-up, whether they have been doing it for years or doing it for months.
And in fact, one of the things I liked at the event we attended last week when you got on stage was just this little simple thing you did about how to hold a microphone, and people are seeing your eyes and your mouth, and it's just those simple things that a lot of people don't understand.
I bring it up, that particular situation, constantly because I'm on a crusade to get every performer in Nashville and everywhere else to stop eating the microphone. There is no reason to be eating the microphone. This is not 2018. Feedback is a thing of the past. You're playing in really nice places with really nice, get your own microphone that doesn't feedback. Don't stand in front of the speakers and get your mouth out of the microphone. Oh, I sound so much better. You can sound just as better. In fact, you won't suffer from the bilabial plosives of the P's and the B's if you get your mouth away from the microphone.
My wife and I have had this exact same conversation, in that, you'll watch a television show and it's just the way somebody is holding the microphone.
Totally.
It is the most annoying thing. And it takes away from the enjoyment of the performance.
It's a distraction, and you don't know. Well, maybe you do know, maybe you don't know. A lot of people don't know, but there's something they didn't like about the performance and they couldn't tell you what it was.
Can't put their finger on it.
And that's my job, is to stop you from doing those things that irritate an audience, but they don't know it.
And really, ultimately, that's what it comes down to. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of artists out there on stage. The attention span of the concert goer is about a minute and a half.
Yep.
So you have to win them over almost immediately and then keep them, because otherwise they're just going to jump on and move to the next artist.
I didn't make this up. I heard it or read it or somebody said it, but I believe it's true. It's a made-up figure, but half the audience decides if they like you or not in the first 10 seconds you walk on stage, before you even get to the microphone, because they know what they know visually. They have no idea what they're hearing. You could be singing 3 different songs and playing 2 different keys, and nobody's going to know. 90% of the audience knows nothing about music, but they know what they see.
Yeah.
And if you can walk on stage and you are in command, and you have a physical presence, and you're smiling, and you're happy to be there, and it exudes from you, you've won that half over. They like you already.
And I think a lot of artists who maybe aren't necessarily as talented as others, but they have that certain, and we've said this many times on the podcast, that it factor, that just, Garth Brooks, once he met someone, never forgot their name. Johnny Cash could walk into a room and everybody knew he was the man in black, and Johnny, didn't necessarily sing that good, but, people loved him.
I say in the book, it's not about talent. It's about persistence, drive, and just, you want to need it. You need to want it. You want to do it more than anything else in life, because if you don't, your competition does. So if you aren't that dedicated to this career, then maybe selling shoes is something you should be doing.
Right.
Where you can clock out at 5 o'clock and forget about it and go ahead with your whatever interests you have in your life. But if you're doing this, the burden of being a solo singer-songwriter, which is generally what I work with for a bunch of reasons. One is, if you're a solo singer-songwriter, you've got all the revenue streams tied up. You perform, so you get all the live money. You write the songs, you get all the publishing. You get all the merch. You don't need a band. You have no overhead. It's the way to go, at least to get your foot in the door in the music industry, is to be a solo singer-songwriter. The downside of that is When you're alone on stage singing a song and performing and entertaining, there's like 6 or 7 totally separate skills going on simultaneously.
Yeah.
This isn't like swimming, where there's maybe 3 things you got to worry about breathing,
Yeah, hold your breath.
Hold your breath.
Yeah.
But this is like, you got to remember all the words, you got to remember all the chords, you got to smile at the right place, you got to move this way, you got to know the song.
And you got to interact with the audience.
Interact with the audience, which is why you need to rehearse your songs and your patter till it's unconscious.
You can do it in your sleep.
You have to be able to wake up and do it in your sleep, so that now the only conscious thing you're doing is watching the audience and talking to them and getting feedback from them and giving it back to them and working with the audience. Performing is all about not pleasing yourself. It's about pleasing the audience. And if you believe it's all about pleasing yourself, you're going nowhere.
Yeah, go sell shoes.
Go sell shoes.
We're going to take a little break. When we come back, I want to start digging into some of the chapters on this book, the Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help Improve Your Chances of Success, written by our guest, Larry Butler. You know what? Before we take a break, though, let's do this, though. If you're one of the first 5 people to email us at musicpodcast@mail.com, that's musicpodcast@mail.com, we will send you a autographed copy of the Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help Improve Your Chances of Success, written by Larry Butler. We'll have Larry sign it. So be one of the first 5 to email us at musicpodcast@mail.com.
Hi, this is Brianna Renee, and you're listening to The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Hi, this is Vinny Rebus, the founder of Indie Connect. Our goal is to ensure that you have the knowledge, the tools, skills, resources, and connections that you need to develop a profitable and long-lasting career in music. One way we do this is through these Business Side of Music podcasts. I'd also like to invite you to check out Indie Connect magazine, our free multimedia online publication packed with practical interviews and advice from music industry experts. Go to www.indieconnectmag, that's www.indieconnectmag.com. Let us walk with you and guide you every step of your musical journey.
You're listening to the business side of music.
We're back in the studio.
We're back.
We're back with Larry Butler,
Hello, everybody.
the author of the Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help Improve Your Chances of Success. I started reading this. I've made it through the first, I guess we'll call them chapters, 25 chapters of 101.
This book is specifically written for people who don't like to read.
Well, and I will say it's easy reading.
Thank you.
Okay. With that also being said, it's pretty blunt. And I think if you have tender feelings or very thin skin, better buckle up and sit back, because this one's going to...
By the way, if that's the case, you aren't going to do well in this career.
Exactly. And you said something earlier, and I've said this many times, be passionate about what you do. You know, if you want to be in the music business, understand there's a gazillion other people. They're passionate. You have to be more passionate than them.
That's correct.
And you may not get as far, but don't lose that passion.
Well, that's actually the subtitle of the book kind of says that, where I say, to help you improve your chances of success.
Yeah.
Reading this book, working with me, or doing anything is no guarantee. If anybody says, I can guarantee to make you a star, run away from that person. Can't happen. It's really a matter of timing. But what this book can do, and what I can do on a one-on-one consultation basis, is get you ready for that opportunity when it appears. Because in this town, in Nashville, opportunities are every day.
Absolutely
If
every day.
you aren't ready and you try to take advantage of an opportunity and you aren't ready, you will be branded not ready.
I
and
couldn't agree
you might as
more.
well go back to Knoxville.
And even though Knoxville,
I saw the sign on the 40 driving in, like, Knoxville, I would go there. Yeah.
let's pick on Knoxville.
Not big.
You know, and that's the thing. Even though Music Row isn't what it used to be, you know, which was record company, publishing company, management company, booking agent. And those days are gone. But this town still is Music City for a reason. As you said, there's a plethora of opportunities. Last week alone, Debbie and I were invited to so many events that I think we picked 2 is what we went to, because...
And I was at one of them.
And you were at one of them, thankfully. We were able to fill a podcast slot
funny,
because of that.
Yeah.
No, seriously. You've got to take the opportunity. And you don't know who's going to be in that audience.
You do not know.
Just read an article, I think yesterday, Blue County, a buddy of my wife's and I, Aaron Benward, who is in the country group Blue County. They've decided to get back together after numerous years of being apart. They've gone over to England and they're performing.
Smart.
And they wound up in a club with 2 people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, the obvious choice is there's 2 people. Let's just make it quick and get out.
Nope.
They stuck it out. They did the show. Well, it turns out the one person of the 2 was a writer for a publication and wrote the most splendid article on them. We read and we went, that speaks volumes for these guys in Blue County.
Perfect.
You never know who's in that audience. Yeah.
Yeah. But the beauty of Nashville, and let me just say this, and why I'm here, why I've moved here, is that there's a live music scene virtually every decent-sized city in the United States. However, to thrive or to even just get by, a live music scene needs 2 things. One is an audience to keep them going while they were learning, and the other is an industry looking for singer-songwriters. This is the only city, town in the United States where both of those things exist.
Right.
You got tourists coming in 365 days a year with one thing to do: go see music performed, even by unknown people. I'm at the listening room on Monday night at 6 for Song Suffragettes, and there's 200 tourists in the room, and they don't know who there is.
Walk down Broadway on a Monday evening at 6 o'clock. Well, first of all, you can't walk down Broadway because every tourist is in town going to all of the honky tonks.
That supports the local music scene and keeps it going. And then part 2 is, in a sense, Austin would be one of the cities, but they don't have this industry like Nashville has.
No.
There's A&R people and publishers and everybody else looking for talent, and here it is.
Yeah, I think Austin, they have South by Southwest, and that feeds that machine, but that's only a certain amount of time.
Once a year.
This
is a 365 deal in this town.
And so you can't forget that. You talk about your book, you've got these different paragraphs or chapters. Let's say that you have different chapters here.
Call it chapters,
Let's call
for
them
the
chapters.
edification of the fact it's a book.
It's a book. And once again, getting into, talking about it. The one thing I like in where you said, give up on your personal life. Don't have pets. Don't try and feed a plant. Don't get involved in long episodic adventures on Netflix. Focus on your music. And if you're not going to do that, have some quiet time. Zero down, so you have an opportunity to think and be creative. Who thinks that way?
Maybe somebody, if they're told, will suddenly wake up and realize, oh yeah, you're right. That's what I should be doing that instead.
Well, I think
who comes at it naturally?
Yeah, I don't think too many people do.
No. And that's my experience, is me having worked at Warner's with a lot of artists on the road and managed since then 4 or 5 singer-songwriters in Los Angeles, and watching them operate their lives. I'm thinking, you need to be doing this, because I've been out on the road and spending a lot of time with the people who are very successful at this, and they don't do what you're doing. They focus on their music, and you need to do that too if you want to be there.
We did talk briefly about the same role that you and I both carried for a while at the labels, which was manager of artist development, in that we both worked with some artists that are very well known. They're very successful, but a lot of people don't realize that it wasn't natural for them to go out and do the meet and greet, or as we called it, the grip and grin. Sometimes it's something you have to learn, and you're thrust into that spotlight. So if you're fortunate enough, if you're the one of 1,000 or so acts that can get to that level, to where you're going to be in these rooms with people you don't know, and you're shaking hands, you need to be prepared. You need to get ready for that. That's part of this whole...
That was part of what I did on the road, was ease a lot of these young bands. Seymour Stein at Sire would sign any English band in pants and send them over here, and they were mainly shoegazers, and so it was my job to kind of educate the shoegazers about, this is America, we're friendly, we don't mind meeting strangers, in fact we embrace it, and we don't mind the fact that the chatter is pointless. It's what we do here.
Do you find that the artists on the stage today that you watch, you see them on television, are they doing it right?
No. Well, mainly as where we were talking before, is the fact that it's about, I'm trying to get people to stop eating the microphone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the number one thing I look for, is if you're eating the microphone, then you are not, no one's working with you. And I can tell with Shay from Dan and Shay stays away from the mic. He has really good mic tech.
And once again, that's so important. It's that first impression, that lasting impression you're going to make on the artist.
That's the one thing I look for. There's an artist I worked with 10 years ago when I was working for Bill Silva, his manager. I was the general manager of Bill Silva's management company back in L.A. And his main client at the time was Jason Mraz. And Jason Mraz does it right. He has everything down. His sets are paced nicely. He never breaks character. It's always an entertaining show. It flows like a set should flow. He is one of the most personable, outgoing, genuine performers you're ever going to meet.
And that's something else that I think a lot of artists don't realize is when you get on stage, your job is not to just perform the songs, it's to entertain. And there is a certain amount of rhythm and balance and formula that goes with that.
Bingo.
And I think that that's conversations I've had with artists that I've worked with over the years, is to figure what that is. You know, your high moments, your high points, I should say, your low points. You know, you talk about in songwriting, everybody writes a mid-tempo song. Well, your show should not be mid-tempo the entire performance.
Live music is not the same as recorded music. I mean, obviously it is in a sense, but recorded music is being just listened to.
Right.
It's just audio. And so you can get by with a mid-tempo song because people are listening to the melody and are listening to the lyrics. Live, they aren't necessarily listening to the melody and lyrics. They're doing most of their mental work watching you and feeling what's coming back. Now there's a feel thing that isn't in the recorded experience, and that feel thing needs to be tempo. You need to get them bouncing in their seats. You got to come on with something happy, not necessarily like Up With America happy, but it's like just something that's pleasant and something they can feel better about themselves and about being there, initially anyway. And the more up-tempo songs you do, the better the audience is going to like it, because there's that feel thing, that body feel that you just don't get with mid-tempo songs.
You have plenty of opportunity to play the hits at any given point in the show.
Any time in the show.
Start your show with it, end your show, do an encore, do several encores, but your job is to entertain.
Bingo.
When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about songwriting. There's a lot of aspects here that we can discuss. Keep picking your brain here. Maybe I'll learn something. But in the studio, Larry Butler, the author of the Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help Improve Your Chances of Success, who's also a live performance coach. You're listening to this edition of The Business Side of Music.
Hi, we're Rockland Road.
And you're listening to The Business Side of Music with Bob Bender.
You're listening to the business side of music. Next up, the Indie Artist Spotlight, brought to you by Reverb Nation.
Like a piece of paper, I turn easily. I'm too sensitive to face reality. I've been broken into bits of glass, and I feel you trying to put me back. I've been living too long in the past tense, a shadow of myself hanging on regrets. One touch from you eases my mind. Hope you can bring me back to life. I'm half asleep, falling through clouds, crashing into you on my way down. Though I'm scared my heart might break, you're a feeling I can't shake. I close my eyes and I can see your reflection here with me. But dreaming's not enough, so I'm finally waking up.
Hi, this is Victoria Renee, and I'm a member of Reverb Nation.
Trying to make sense of what happened then. Not sure I can take that chance again.
Los Angeles. You can consider my style of music soulful pop. Growing up, I listened to a lot of Marvin Gaye, Beyonce, Aretha Franklin. I love Jessie J, of course, Britney. I'm a 90s kid. I performed recently at Southern Women in Film and Television Convention in Nashville. I've had the honor of performing at NAMM. I've opened up Ariana Grande. And my newest single is called A Better Tomorrow. It's on iTunes, Spotify, all the streaming platforms. Proceeds go to St. Jude Children's Hospital.
There'd be no sadness to cry. There'd be no selfish to lie. There'd be no reason for crying. There'd be no empty, no why. I see it when I close my eyes. Peace on earth and peace of mind. Let it go. We have to restore this planet's soul. Teach it something more than what we know. Give it water, give it sun, room to grow. We can build a better tomorrow. There'd be no nightmares, only dreams. There'd be no evil people with angel wings. There'd be no war zones, just simple things. There'd be more love than diamond rings. I see it when I close my eyes. Peace on earth and peace of mind. Let it go. We have to restore this planet's soul. Teach it something more than what we know. Give it water, give it sun, room to grow. I can see a better tomorrow. I can see a better tomorrow. We share this place, we all belong. Light the way till dark is gone. Walking away still means you're strong. Rise above, hope isn't gone. Let it go. We have to restore this planet's soul. Teach it something more than what we know. Give it water, give it sun, room to grow. Let the goal of peace invade your soul. I can see a better tomorrow. I can see a better tomorrow.
Once again, this is Victoria Renee, and I'm a member of Reverb Nation. And you can find me on the internet really anywhere, Twitter, Facebook, all those things at Victoria Renee, Renee, or Instagram, Victoria Renee Plummer, Plummer.
You're listening to the business side of music.
We're back in the studio here in Nashville, Tennessee with Larry Butler, the author of the Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help Improve Your Chances of Success. I'm just going to keep pitching that title until it's firmly
available on Amazon
available.
in printed and digital form.
There you go.
$10. Bargain.
And we'll find out all the places that they can order. Larry's also a live performance coach. I've made it up to number 25 of 101 Ways. Make sure your songs contain all 4 ways to entertain an audience: melody, lyrics, tempo, and a catchy opening riff. Some years ago, we saw Kenny Loggins perform in concert. At that point, Kenny didn't have the usual big band. I think he might have had 3, maybe 4 players behind him. And he started off the show doing his whole acoustic performance. Danny's song, Pooh's Corner. And you're kind of going, okay, is this going to eventually go somewhere? But once he kicked it into high gear, the audience they were exhausted because it was such a great performance. But every one of those songs he did, whether it was up-tempo, mid-tempo, or a ballad, were just great songs. You talk about Joni Mitchell. I love this quote, and you have it in your book. It's not a good song until it has lyrical sensitivity and a moment of clarity. Until then, it's just complaining. Where did you've got several quotes in here. Where'd you find these quotes?
I have to be honest. There's a site online called Brainy Quotes, and I just went there and pulled up famous singer-songwriters and pulled. In fact, I have 365 of them. I have a Twitter feed. It's at Larry from Ohio. All pushed together.
At Larry from Ohio.
On Twitter, at Larry from Ohio. If you go there every day, you'll get a quote from a singer-songwriter about, famous like Joni, about their perception of things that go on in the music business and in performing and in songwriting.
So when we talk about songwriters, and you touch on this in the book, you don't have to be a great songwriter to start with. You just need to learn. You need to learn the craft. You need to learn the trade. I love how you said, sit down and listen to the Beatles.
Totally.
Because you're right. Lennon and McCartney and Harrison and Ringo. They crafted some great songs that were all over the map musically.
That's the beauty of the Beatles repertoire.
Yeah.
There are indeed other great songwriters, but historically, those other great songwriters, their songs tend to kind of sound alike.
Yeah.
Or not exactly alike, but alike enough that they fit into a genre. The Beatles don't fit into a genre. Every song is totally differently written, produced, arranged, sung, everything. It's like you can learn how pop music works by learning the Beatles catalog.
Well, I think the only one that comes to mind almost immediately that might have been different is Carole King. I think the songs that she has written, I wore her Tapestry album out. She's what?
Brilliant.
Yeah, she is. I wore her Tapestry album out when I was in high school.
She writes simple sing-along style melodies with an R&B feel, but with chording behind it that's like, wow.
Yeah.
How did you come up with that inventive arrangement? You could have just banged out C, F, and G on most of these melodies, but instead, she's got stuff going on underneath that's like brilliant.
Hoyt Axton was the same way, and Ray Stevens. There's just a lot of great guys out there, great songwriters out there. The songwriter, once again, it comes back to honing your craft, building it, creating something. You know what? I didn't like this song. That's okay. Don't throw it away. Put it away. It might be something that you can build upon once you learn some more things. It's all about elements. It's all about components. You can't shove a square peg through a round hole. How do you know this? Because I've done it. It doesn't work. Or I should say I've tried to do it. It doesn't work. And also, being a songwriter is probably, in my opinion, is one of the most important things for you to accomplish as an artist in this business.
Then there's a down of sorts. Bernie Taupin says, you can't learn songwriting. You either have it or you don't.
That's right.
Now, you can learn the craft of songwriting to discover if you have it or don't. You might have it or don't, and if you don't know how songs are constructed, if you don't have any music theory, you're not going anywhere with that talent.
And you brought up that too in the book, that go to college, go to school, learn some music theory, learn music business. Don't just sit in a park and strum the guitar.
Right. Yeah, because college, or at least however you want to accomplish this, forces you to read, write, think, be rational, which is not a natural thing for most artists. To think things through, show up on time, do what you promised to do, do what you were told to do and agreed to do, and actually follow through and finish with it. If you can come out with a college degree, you go, well, okay.
And you have something to fall back on.
It doesn't even have to be a music school. But the arts, mechanical engineering is not going to help you get into the music business, but the arts will. Just anything because if you're going to write great songs, they have to be based on great stories. And great stories are in literature. Read literature.
And you talk about that too, that read poetry, read fictional stories. And you know what? Not every song that's ever written about somebody or something was actually truth.
Jason Mraz says the best song about making things up when I write songs is that I can make things up. It's wide open. I don't have to write about myself.
Yeah, and I think those are sometimes the best stories out there. In your book, you talk a little bit about staging and performance, visual and style.
Which is really the meat of what I do.
Yeah, I think it's important that up-and-coming artists understand that how you appear on stage is as big of an effect on the attendee of that show. And let's face it, if your music's not getting played on radio, and you talk a little bit in the book about doing the tours, the radio tours and visiting the radio stations, if you're playing on stage, whether it's 2 people, as we talk about with Blue County, or you're in front of 2,000 people opening for somebody, or anywhere in between, your appearance and how you come across on those, as you said, the first 10 seconds, can make or break your fan base for a long, long time.
Long time. First impressions mean everything. And I'm a big fan of, as I mentioned in the book, it's really great actually if you begin your career in a marketplace other than New York, LA, Austin, Nashville, Boulder, Seattle, Boston, Austin, Atlanta. If you can make your mistakes somewhere else and then hone that into some semblance of a professional performance acumen, then you almost have to move to a top 20 market in order to find an audience, in order to find people who are going to fund your career in order to get. But don't think for a second, if you don't have your at least performance skills down, I'd not come, because first impressions mean everything, and you'll show up at some like Nashville and you'll get on a songwriter round and people go, you're not so good, and that's their impression of you for the rest of your life.
And you brought up something too, and I've said this before, you may be the big fish in the little pond in your town, because everybody's told you, and you covered that in the book, don't listen to family, don't listen to friends, and everybody tells you, gee, you need to go to LA, New York, Austin, Nashville, Chicago, wherever. And you show up, and there's a line around the block of people as good, if not better. Whether you're a singer, songwriter, guitarist, keyboard player, bus driver, there's a lot of shoes that, or I should say, there's a lot of feet out here that can fill these shoes, whether or not you're here. So it gets back to the very beginning. Be passionate about what you do. Be more passionate about anybody else. Mm-hmm. So maybe you have that chance of success.
I mainly work with those who have actually learned the basic craft of singing, performing on an instrument at the same time, preferably their own material, and with some acumen, some skill of performance. It's very difficult for me to teach you anything about entertaining until you have mastered the craft of performance.
I want to talk about that when we come back a little bit, especially from a radio tour perspective, which is something both you and I have done.
Oh, boy, yeah.
We have in the studio today Larry Butler, the author of Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help Improve Your Chances of Success. He should know he's a live performance coach based here in Nashville, Tennessee. But before we do take a break, let's give away another 5 copies of Larry's book. Just first 5 people to drop us an email at musicpodcast@mail.com. That's musicpodcast@mail.com. Don't forget to include your name, obviously, and your mailing address. And we'll let you know if you won, and Larry will autograph a copy and send it out to you.
This is Jackie Jack White. You're listening to The Business Side of music.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Hi, this is Vinny Rebus, the founder of Indie Connect. Our goal is to ensure that you have the knowledge, the tools, skills, resources, and connections that you need to develop a profitable and long-lasting career in music. One way we do this is through these Business Side of Music podcasts. I'd also like to invite you to check out Indie Connect magazine, our free multimedia online publication packed with practical interviews and advice from music industry experts. Go to www.indieconnectmag.com. That's www.indieconnectmag.com. Let us walk with you and guide you every step of your musical journey.
You're listening to the business side of music.
We're back in the studio. Larry Butler, live performance coach and author of the Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help Improve Your Chances of Success. One of the things that we share together is our time on the road with acts when we were at the labels doing those wonderful radio tours where, you talk about a grip and grin fest where you have to go in every day and be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and, here's a dozen donuts and a gallon of orange juice and, we want to play our song for you. How was it?
Initially, I'm reminded, Mo Austin, who ran Warner's, was a big fan of comedy. He would sign comedians, even though nobody was buying comedy records anymore. He enjoyed it, and that was okay. We had Howie Mandel's comedy thing, and we had to give it a shot. Stephen Wright, I went out on the tour, and Sam Kinison, I did radio promo tours with these guys. I can remember being with Howie Mandel, and we had done maybe 3 or 4 days of a 2-week radio promo tour where you do the morning radio, and then you do lunch with radio, and then you do afternoon drive, and then you go to a club in the evening.
Take someone out to dinner or whatever.
Take somebody out to dinner and that kind of thing. And at the end of the 3rd day, Howie was like, this is work. He said, when I work like, 2 or 3 hours a day, maybe at night, and that's all the performing I have to do. This is a whole day of performing. You never stop.
Yeah.
I can't take it.
And that has got to be, I know from my experience, and my first radio tour I ever did in my life was with a band of 6 guys.
Oh.
And it was like herding kittens because the fiddle player would go one direction and the lead singer go in a different direction. And then I've got the regional from the label going, hey, Bob, where are all these guys? And you're trying to put them together. And a couple of them didn't want to get off the bus because it was too early in the morning.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
Yeah.
I always tried to make each stop have some kind of purpose or event. Like if we were in Dallas, we had a day in Dallas. I say, listen, we'll do the morning show, we'll do this, and then we're going to drive by the grassy knoll. Give them a destination and or there's this strip club that has a great lunch. We're going to go there. And that would get them out of bed. If you don't want to get out of bed, you're going to miss it.
Yeah, going to miss the grassy knoll and or the strip club.
Or the strip club.
You decide. Songwriting is one thing, performing is another thing.
Yep.
But going into that radio station and doing more than just holding a guitar in your hand. Debbie and I worked with an artist at one point, great voice, but didn't write songs, couldn't play an instrument. And, we talked about doing the radio tour, and we said, you're going to have to take a guitar player with you because you can't sing these songs a cappella in the station.
Or to track.
And you say it in your book, you don't have to be a virtuoso on the instrument.
You don't want to be virtuoso.
But you better be able to carry yourself,
adequately accompany yourself. That's all that's required. Because radio station DJs and or their listener winner audiences are not guitar players.
Right.
There's no reason to show off the fact that you really know how to play. You just need to accompany yourself adequately.
And you don't want to go into big guitar riffs anyway.
Nope.
You're there to showcase your voice and showcase the song and say to the program director, the music director, please play my music on the air. But you're right. It is a tough job. It is.
But it's a show at the same time. Even though you might have 1, 2, 3 songs, you need to, again, when I do radio tours, if I can find an artist who will do this, I have them come in like from the back or from a door or whatever, as if it's a performance, as if it's a real show. And they come on strumming the guitar before they get to the microphone. They're already playing and they're already smiling, and they get to the microphone and they sing. And then between songs, they tell stories about preferably about the songs, but also about maybe something theoretically that funny thing happened to us on the way over to the station. Of course, it's the same funny thing that happened in the last station, in the last town.
But you have to carry it as if it's brand new, first time it's being told.
And it's a script, and it's a rehearsed script, and you know it cold, and you say it, and you can say it just real comfortably as if you're just making it up, like, you know what happened to me this morning, that kind of thing. And
you get better telling that story
every time.
Yeah.
And you have a closer.
So let me ask you, are radio tours still viable?
Oh, yeah, I think so.
Would they work for an independent artist?
Yes, if indeed you have the funding for that.
Yeah, because it's not cheap.
If you catch my drift.
It and it's very time consuming.
Very time consuming.
You're out there.
It's not a cheap date. It's to do it properly, it's expensive.
But you don't have to show up in a tour bus.
Oh, God, no.
You know.
In fact, it's better that you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
you don't have to look like a lot of money, but there has to be money behind it. And a lot of it is preparation. You can't just decide, I'm going on a radio tour and leave Friday.
And go knock on doors. Yeah.
You can book it. It needs to be booked, first of all, as you and I both know, at least 2 weeks, if not a month in advance to get your slot. And in that 2 weeks, somebody like myself needs to be working with you on what you're going to do every minute of the day and how you're going to react to certain situations, like the power goes out, your mic goes dead, the audience, the winners don't show up in time, the pizza's cold, I don't know.
And you just said something, the slot, because guess what? You're not the only artist in that radio station that week, let alone maybe that day.
That day.
Yeah.
And the thing you got to remember is if you want to make an impression on these guys who've just seen somebody do it well, you need to do it better.
We were out on the road with this one band when I was doing the radio tour. We were either in front of or behind for about 2 or 3 weeks Toby Keith, Shania Twain, and someone else. I don't remember who the third one was. But we'd walk in, and there were the pictures, already autographed and laid out, and the CDs, and we're like, oh my gosh, we got to go up. And I'm sure they were thinking the same thing when they showed up. And yeah, you're not the only one doing this.
Most of my radio tour experience was while I was at Warner's, which was the 80s and 90s, and was pretty much all rock radio and a little bit of pop and a lot of alternative radio, like the RLTs of the world or Lightning or whatever it is, that era, who always put artists on the air. Now everybody's putting artists on the air because that's how they keep the listeners interested. Like we got whoever is coming on later on to sing their song.
Did you have a favorite artist that you just enjoyed working with? I mean, I had mine.
You tell me yours while I'm thinking.
Well, I think, one of my favorites probably had to have been Gene Pitney.
No kidding?
Yeah.
Yes.
Who we were out doing symphonic tours together. So we had I think a 4-piece rhythm section, and then we just...
With the symphonies.
I mean, to me, it was just... He was just
wonderful. Could he
wonderful.
sing or what?
Well, and a gentleman. That was the most important thing, I think I've said this before on the podcast. There were 2 things Gene would always ask me at the end of the night. Did you get the bottle of wine? And did you get the check? Yeah. And usually in that order, But yeah, he was probably one of the best.
Nothing stands out. I mean, I have quirky things.
Well, give me a quirky thing.
Here's a quirky thing.
Okay.
It's an artist you maybe don't know. There's a performance artist named Laurie Anderson. She's from New York, and she had a out of the left field. Well, there's another artist too. An out of left field single called "Oh Superman," and it was Warner's was behind it because she was an artist, not just another singer. But she's still later in her career, later in her life, she married Lou Reed, and
gosh,
I mean, she went to New York, and she and David Byrne were like the avant-garde artists in music and literature and whatever, and a wonderful person. We had the best time because she was intelligent, and she didn't mind meeting people and conversing about the meaning of life or hamburgers. She'd just talk about anything.
That's interesting you say that, because the artists that I remember more favorably in my 40 years in the business were the intelligent ones. The ones that you could... I toured with a heavy metal band out of Canada for a while, Anvil. And in fact, VH1 did a documentary on them.
Yeah.
And we've had Lips, Steve Kudlow, the lead singer, on the show. These guys would get on stage, and they're their typical heavy metal band. They're raunchy, and it's just, But then they'd get off, and we'd get on the bus, And these guys would talk about world politics, and we'd talk about, the gold standard. And to me, it was a delight every night as we're driving to the next city to have conversations with these guys.
That's amazing.
I truly enjoyed it.
That's great.
And then you get the ones who just, they want to go to a bar and get drunk and have a great time, and then you got to drag their butts onto the bus and get them to the next city and hope they wake up in time to do whatever it is you got to do.
The most not revealing but surprising, I shall say, of the young bands that I worked with that came over from England and were shoegazers was U2. On their very first tour, not shoegazers, they came over. As I said, you got to be ready. They were ready.
Yeah.
They had the package down, and Bono had his rap down to the point he had to say, all right, that's enough.
And when you look at some of that early day footage of U2, they were a lot different looking back then than they are now. I mean, you talk about somebody that has honed their craft and has honed their look is those guys. That's a good benchmark.
There's a photo of me with them on my Facebook page in 1981 or something at some small AM station in Northern California because no one else would play their music. They were a college radio band.
Yeah.
And they were kids.
Yeah. And that's something else, we can talk about is you don't have to go to all of the top 40 Billboard, especially if you're an indie artist. First of all, they're not going to touch you.
Thank you.
They're not going to play your music.
That's it.
Go find those college stations. Go find, the mom and pop. They're still out there. You just got to do a little more work. But you got to call, let them know you're coming. They don't like surprises any more than you like surprises.
It's difficult, if not impossible, to get into any radio station without the help and forbearance of a indie promo person.
Right. You still need a radio promoter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's good ones out there, especially here in Nashville.
I just had lunch today with a lady named Leslie Roof. She does Americana, AAA promotion. She's fabulous. And this is what she does. Because she works indie artists and gets them on the Lightnings of the world and the college radio of the world and gets their records played so that there is exposure to a niche audience who respects and admires your music as opposed to, I'm going to be on the big top 40, so what? That audience is just there for amusement while they're running through rush hour.
Let me ask you this question. Do you think terrestrial radio is still viable?
In country music, for sure.
Yeah.
And that niche marketing thing, the AAAs and the college radio and whatever provide not only the music but also the curation that I don't believe you're going to find in any algorithmic playlist thingy.
Right, I understand.
And there's always that, because it's a local station, there's that local touch. There's something going on locally that puts a community together that I don't believe any streaming service out of Holland can do.
It's one of the few complaints I have about, say, Sirius XM, which that's pretty much all we listen to when we're driving around. It is the same playlist. Change channels, it's still, for whatever that format, it's the same playlist. I love Americana radio because some of those playlists are 60, 70, how many songs can you play? Yeah, deep. And you find artists that you wouldn't otherwise discover, but these Americana or the Roots radios, they're taking the chance. They're taking the risk by playing something. Yeah,
I love that.
And I love
that's the way you and I are brought up.
Yeah, that's how we were brought up.
That's radio.
Back, when AM radio was kind of the leading.
It was, wasn't it?
So, Larry, how can people find you?
Simple way is to go to my website, which is www, of course, Did It Music, 3 words, DIDITMUSIC, all put together, diditmusic.com.
They can find your book there?
Yep.
They can find your book on Amazon?
Amazon, under my name or with the title. It's mainly Amazon. I'm really not anywhere else.
Gotcha.
There's no place else to be. Come on.
So Larry Butler, live performance coach, author of the Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help Improve Your Chances of Success. Larry, thanks for being on the show.
Bob, my pleasure. Thank you.
If you're interested in learning more about our show, drop us a line at musicpodcast@mail.com. That's musicpodcast@mail.com. If you have any suggestions of persons or topics that involve some facet of the music industry that you'd like to hear about on our podcast, please feel free to let us know. You can follow us on Facebook on the Business Side of Music podcast page. You can also find us on Twitter at Music Business Podcast. Also, if you're listening to this podcast on iTunes, post a review on what you think of our show. This is Bob Bender, and you've been listening to this edition of The Business Side of Music.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. Co-producer for the show is Vinny Rivas. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Los Angeles, California and Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound designed by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Fuson.